The electric guitar and the lightsaber have been popular American cultural icons since the 1970s. Now, imagine if an electric guitar and a lightsaber fell in love and they had a baby together. What exactly would that look like? Well, that is the creative inspiration behind this new electronic musical instrument called the Optron. The Optron is a multi-sensory musical controller that combines lights, sound, electronic sensors, and tactile feedback to create this new multi-sensory experience. And the origins of the Optron go back to 2016, where I visited a hardware store and I purchased a 4-foot LED shop light. And I took the LEDs out of it and replaced it with my very own individually controllable 144 red, green, and blue LED lights. And then I also put in some motion sensors and a linear position sensor to imitate a guitar fretboard on the top to track the position of a finger. And then I did a non-contact motion sensor here to do air guitar gestures. And then finally, I used the color and position of my lights and programmed using computer vision software a tracking program that would translate color and position of those lights to control musical effects and parameters. Well, it's been 3 years since the inception of the original Optron, and I learned an awful lot and wanted to make a bunch of redesigns. And so I'm delighted to present to you the Optron 2.0. And the only original thing from the shop light that I kept on this version is this 4-foot white opaque light diffuser tube. Everything else is original. And so I started with a piece of 4-foot aluminum extrusion track. And these are grooved so that you can fit various components and mount components all along the length of this track. And what I've used is a CAD software to 3D design custom parts and then use a 3D printer to transform those digital files into physical objects that I've mounted onto this extrusion. And so all of this is custom plastic that you see in the black here. So sensors that are on the original Optron that have translated to this one is a 3-axis accelerometer, so I can measure tilting, and also a 3-axis gyroscope that does rotational acceleration. And basically, as you swing this thing around like a lightsaber, that helps you track it. I moved the linear pressure and position sensor that was on the top, which was originally very ungainly and complicated to perform. Being a guitar player, I moved it over to a place where a guitar player's hand would just naturally fit ergonomically onto a fretboard. And so this is a custom designed fretboard that uses a linear position and a pressure sensor. But then I've also added in a rubber silicone pad, and that gives you additional tactile feedback as well as control over the pressure that your fingers are applying. And then I added a Teflon strip that I laser cut to also include fret positions here. And so I've exposed using the laser cutter little areas of that silicone pad where guitar frets would normally be spaced out. And so the Teflon allows your fingers to slip and glide effortlessly from one fret to the other. And then your fingers can feel when they stick to that silicone pad. And so without even looking, your fingers can nimbly move around on that fretboard, feeling where they're at without having to look down at it. There are a couple new sensors that I wanted to show you. The first is this thing that I call the ePick. And the ePick is just an off-the-shelf bin sensor. And you can imagine for a moment that you have a bow and arrow. And two things that I'm tracking is if you pull that bowstring back, that gives you the amount of energy or pressure that you're putting into that system. And then when you release it, that indicates an event for a pluck. And I'm measuring that in both directions on this bend sensor. And so how far back it's been pulled before it's been plucked indicates the intensity of the pluck, and then the plucked event itself. And I went ahead and 3D printed a small protrusion here, about the width of a guitar string. And I'm just naturally plucking where a guitar string would be positioned on a guitar. Finally, the other sensor is actually an array of 8 sensors, and these are the red things spaced across the top here. These are from SparkFun, called XZ gesture sensors, or rather ZX gesture sensors. And they not only measure how far away your hand is from the sensor, but also the linear position horizontally. And because I've spaced 8 of these out optimally, I can smoothly track the position of both of my hands on this over the lights. And what this creates is an effect where my hands can interact with the lights all along the length of the tube. And then those lights and my hand movements control audio effects and sound and other parameters as well.